hopefully, when he joins. All right, so let's get started. Let's see. Let me share my desktop real quick. Okay, so before we get started, we will be recording this webinar and putting it on YouTube. So hopefully that's okay with everyone. So Lisa, I think you can hit record.
It's recording now.
Yep, thank you. And hopefully you can see my slides. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us today for this Clowder webinar. So let's see, we have, I'll be giving some general updates, brief updates. And then we'll have probably Todd go first. He'll talk a little bit about how we deploy the Geoserver within Clowder and a bunch of geospatial extractors and previewers that we have. This comes up quite a lot because we have a lot of geospatial projects that have a lot of geospatial data. And it's also a little bit of a challenge sometimes to deploy some of the infrastructure for this. So Todd is going to tell us a little bit more about what we can do and how you can deploy this kind of functionality to your Clowder instance. And then Colter, if you can join us, he'll be talking about some really good, surprising new work he has been doing just before the holidays. But it connects to a lot of the work that him and his team have been doing, which is using Clowder as a backend to Unity. And so the interesting thing is that I believe in the past, he has shown some of his work in prior webinars that he was reading from Clowder, and in this case, he's actually writing information from Unity 3D directly to Clowder. So you don't see Clowder, but Clowder is just a backend. But beyond his research and what he's specifically going to show today, this is also potentially a pattern for people who want to use Unity to connect to Clowder. So in terms of high-level kind of general updates, just these, a quick note about these webinars. They're right now, we're doing them quarterly. If you have a topic you want to present, please let us know. We just kind of look down the list of things we've been doing and pick interesting things. But for example, Colter kind of volunteered to present some of his work for this, for this webinar. So that was great. And we have all the slides are on the wiki. And the recording will be available on the Clowder YouTube channel. All of these links are available on the Clowder landing page at clowderframework.org. If you haven't seen it, please go to it. Everything should be there. And my next doesn't work. Okay, so since last webinar, November 2020, we have had a bunch of releases. You can see the versions at the top. Most of them are patches, really just a bunch of bug fixes. But we do have a couple of new features that we're not going to go in depth in detail today, but that might be of interest to you. One is some work that actually in both cases, I think Max did a bunch of this, Max Burnett. The first one is improvements to reports API. So if you're not familiar with it, if you have a Clowder instance and you want to get some CSV with a bunch of stats about usage and downloaded data sets, which ones are the most downloaded and so on, we have that capability. And we've done some improvements to for the Syngenta project to what it can do. And then also we're also been improving ways in which you can manually submit files to extractors. If you're not familiar with it, Clowder, besides managing the data, also has this cloud of extractors behind the scenes that you can develop and use, kind of like a scientific gateway. We've added some ability in a data set to select specific files instead of all of them, or one at a time, and submit them as a batch submission. All of this information and all of the details are available on GitHub. We try to keep a pretty good change log and the releases with entries from the change log. So if you're curious, please take a look at it. We're developing an all-pause 2021 virtual meeting. So last year we had one at PERC. We had our first one at PERC. That one went really well. It was in person. Actually, I guess it was the year before. I forgot. Last year's blur. This year, obviously, we're going to have it all virtual. We have some tentative dates for the end of June. We'll send out more information through the usual channels. And if you do have specific topics you want us to include, please let us know now, because we're working on the agenda. If there are aspects of Clowder or the community, what people are doing in specific areas, please let us know. We'll try to cover both what people are doing with Clowder, as well as more kind of technical, meetings and tutorials on how the system works and how to extend it and so on. But please do let us know if there's anything that you're interested in hearing about or contributing. Just a quick reminder that we have these Slack office hours. So every Thursday at 9 a.m. We basically pay more attention to Slack than we do on a regular basis, and a few of us are there to answer questions. This can be very specific technical questions as well as very high-level questions. If you have students that might be interested in using Clowder and they want to ask some basic questions, this is also a great time to kind of send them our way. The information is also posted on the main website. Finally, so Rob Cooper has been doing a lot of work with cloud deployments. We have a new resource of NCSA OpenStack cluster called Radiant. It's really interesting because it's a subscription-based cost model. So kind of like AWS, you basically say, I want these many resources for 1, 2, 3, 4, however many years, and that's all you got to do. So for Clowder, this is very relevant because as part of the CSSI grant, we're trying to come up with an easy cost model for people who don't have the resources to install Clowder on their own machines or don't know how to. And so we can do that for them. And so we're working on that. And Rob has been doing a lot of work on creating these instances as easy as possible. So what that means is that we want to get to a point where, if we need a new instance, we just gotta, change a couple of configuration flags and then just push a button. And ideally, the magic happens behind the scenes and everything is up and running. This builds on a lot of the work that he and others have done over the years with Docker and Docker Compose. But in this case, we're building on Kubernetes and using Terraform to set up the entire environment on OpenStack. So there's some really interesting stuff that he's doing here. He kind of talked a couple of the last webinar or the webinar before about a little bit about Kubernetes, I think, maybe mostly Docker Compose. But for us who are deploying this, Docker Compose is still kind of our de facto way, but we've started using Kubernetes and Helm, and it's working out pretty well. And so right now, Radiant, thanks to this work that he has done, we have an instance we set up for EarthCube and another one for the Permafrost Discovery Gateway, and we're learning by doing this. All right, that's all I had in terms of quick introductions or updates on the project. So let's see. So if Colter is not here, we can have Todd. You want to go next? And I think I stopped sharing. Yes, there we go.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Okay, let me share my screen really quick here. All right. All right, and I'll be presenting about the Geoserver and some extractors that are available in Clowder. I will also mention that a lot of the content for this is relatively new to me, so I'm not quite an expert, but hopefully hopefully at the end of the presentation, you'll learn about some of the things that, some of the geospatial capabilities in Clowder as far as what kind of files what kind of files it can handle and what kind of previews you can get. And you'll also learn how to deploy the Geoserver, and we'll look at 3 different extractors: the GeoShape preview, the GeoTIFF preview, and the GeoTIFF metadata. And then we'll look at two different previewers that show both the file layer and also the data set. And I'll go ahead and move on to the next one. So pretty much like when it comes to layers, it can be any kind of geospatial data that you'd want to see on a map. And there's also kind of generally two types of data. There's raster data versus vector data. Raster data is when there's areas that are kind of like tiled as opposed to just latitude, longitude points on a map. And depending on what kind of application, one type of data might be more appropriate than another. And I've got a couple of links here, and there's some examples of these different sorts of files and data down here. And moving on, what's Geoserver? Here's the Geoserver logo and their webpage here. It's open source server for sharing geospatial data, and it implements a bunch of different well-known standards that are widely used. It works with the open layers and leaflet JavaScript libraries to actually put things on a map, and you can also use Google Maps or ArcGIS, and there's some other options in there as well too. And this is kind of a slide of, actually looks like my arrows. Okay, here we go. So the idea is that when we're uploading a geotiff or a shape file, the extractor sends it over here to Geoserver, where it creates a layer. And then that layer is sent back to Clowder, and that's what we use to see the preview. There is also an option to run Geoserver using a Clowder proxy. I was not able to get that working for today, so I won't be able to cover that piece. But it's an option that increases security because you have to be logged in to see the layers. So I'm going to deploy this using Docker Compose. For those of you who don't know or who don't use it that often, Docker allows applications to be run in containers. We do that for Clowder. The Docker Compose file will define the services that make up the app. So for Clowder, we have like in our Docker Compose file, there's like Clowder, MongoDB, RabbitMQ, and all of the other dependencies, as well as a Docker Compose file for the extractors, and then a Docker Compose file for the Geoserver. And here's the Docker Compose file for the Geoserver, or at least part of it. One of the things that I had to do is replace the local host here with the IP. This Docker file will be added as a later pull request for Clowder for adding this in along with the other ones, so it's available to more people. And next, and here's kind of just like a shot of, here's all the extractors and things running in Docker. Like here you'd see like the GeoShape preview up here. You see Clowder Geoserver down here, and then you see the GeoTIFF preview and the GeoTIFF metadata here. And here's sort of what the GeoShape preview would do. We'd get a file here. We have like the previewer here, and here's this shows what kind of files are in that zip file. When it has one of these zip files, it can extract the information and show the preview on the map and get the metadata. And here's a GeoTIFF file. We uploaded this file here, and now with the geospatial previewer, it puts it on the map. And it also has the GeoTIFF metadata here where it shows the metadata from that file. And then we also have like a data set level preview where we'd see one of the, you can't really see both of them in the same screenshot because this area is so much smaller than this area, but you'd be able to see every type of preview in the file on this previewer. And then when you do this, you'll see the layers here in the Geoserver that have been created, which you can click on the layer preview and actually see them. For future steps, we'll want to make sure that we can deploy this using Kubernetes, since a lot of projects use Kubernetes, and also better instructions on how to set up a Clowder proxy for the Geoserver. All right, and so really quickly, I'm also going to try to show a live demo we can see that we've got 2 extractors running here. And I'm going to go ahead and upload some files in our new data set here. And then I'm going to go ahead and run these extractors. And as you can see here, over here, it just ran that extractor. And now when we go look at the file, we see both a preview, but also the geospatial preview here. And we see the same type of metadata that we saw from the slide. And then this one being the GeoShape preview. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that one there. And let's go ahead and see if this one ran. And it looks like it will be. All right. And because it's just a general rule that live demos don't work out, this one didn't work for some reason. But if I go back here, I can look at the data set and I can look at the visualizations. And I can see that that other file is seen. You do see this on the data set preview. So basically, you know, it's you can put as many files in a data set. I don't know if there's a hard limit, but you'll see them all on the map. All right, and that is kind of it on my end, or I guess I can take questions if anybody's got questions, if I can hopefully answer any. I guess no questions.
Any questions for Todd?
Just a comment quickly. If you look, Todd, if you can bring up your slide about the zip file.
Okay.
The GeoShape. Right. The zip file is the combination of all the pieces that make up the shapefile. And so you can see the SHP and the PRJ. Those two are required pieces, I believe, in there, because those are what it needed to actually render the shapefile correctly on the map that you see next to it. And so when you create a zip file, you need to make sure you have those two pieces sitting in the root of the zip file, because that's what the extractor looks for and uses that information to actually upload it to the Geoserver.
Another interesting comment maybe is the pyramid stuff that we're doing for simple, where if you have very large geotiffs, there are ways to embed pyramids within them. And then when you upload them and you have this client previewer kind of talking to Geoserver, it will use that pyramid. So it will make it a lot more performant when you have very large geotiffs.
So, Todd, if you go back to your demo for a second.
Sure.
And if you do another upload.
Sure.
I'm secretly also stalling for time to see if we can get Colter still to come in.
He's going to join us, so just he's working on it. There was some confusion, and he's in class. But
can you add one more file for me, Todd?
Add one more file, sure.
Yeah.
Just any file or what?
No, I was looking at your screen secretly to see. Can you? I think the 2009 30 meters Illinois WGS 84.
Okay, this one. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was an issue with this file. That's why I didn't use it in the demo.
If you can upload that to the GeoTIFF, maybe still.
All right, we will.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I think for some, well, the GeoTIFF preview is done, so.
Can you hit refresh maybe?
We did have an issue with this file before, but and it's not showing up in this previewer, so.
Okay. But yeah, so Luigi said, if you uptake a large TIFF image and you upload it, it will create a pyramid for you on the fly as well. So you don't even need to have a pyramid in the image itself. It will make it such that when you actually look at it, sort of like Google Maps, when you zoom in, it will use different levels of the image. And that way you don't actually have to do a pre-computation for that.
And it looks like it did the shape file. So if you want to click on bedrock topography, the one at the beginning.
Well, let's see what I got for metadata here. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Doesn't look like I got any. Oh yeah, the GeoTIFF metadata is saying it's got an error, and then the GeoTIFF preview didn't really. It just says normal TIFF file. I think this is a file we had issues with before, though. So.
Bad example. Okay.
Yeah.
And can you go back to the shape file real quick?
Sure.
Here's now.
There we go.
And so I don't know if it's clear, but just one thing as real quick. So these layers are basically coming directly from the Geoserver, right? And they're coming from the metadata. So that's where you say, yeah, down here where you say WMS layer, it has that big long URL. If you can scroll down to the metadata. And
actually,
so
this is the one this is actually the server, and I accidentally clicked on the wrong window, but it'll do the same thing. So.
Yeah. Oh, right. That's fine. But a point being that you can, if you wanted, ignore totally the extractor component and just upload a WMS layer URL on a file. And then if you do that, the previewer both here as well as the dataset previewer will fire off and show you that preview. So if you do have a Geoserver instance and you have a bunch of layers in it, there are simple ways to also utilize those layers within Clowder just as a preview mechanism.
So
Any
question?
questions? Yeah, please.
What were you saying earlier about attaching QGIS to the Clowder Geoserver?
Right. Yeah. So Todd, do you want to talk about that real quick?
That's actually something that I really don't honestly know about. I know that in some way you can get Geoserver to work with QGIS and ArcGIS, but I do not actually know how to do that.
Yeah.
If you go to slide 5.
Yep. We can fill in. So do you want me to go, Rob?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So basically, one of the things that we also do as part the extractor does is it registers if it's running. It registers a CSW entry on the Geoserver, which is a catalog standard that the Geoserver OGC cataloging standard. And so what we can do is you can, with QGIS, connect QGIS to the cataloging server endpoint, and you can list and query all the layers you have. And then you can download them using the usual WMS. So basically, you can use Clowder to upload all these layers, and then in QGIS, you can point them to the CSW endpoint, and then you can query and search and download the data directly into QGIS if you're going to be doing anything with it. Yeah.
The nice thing is because it goes to the proxy, the Clowder proxy, it makes it so that you can only see those things that you have access to as well. So if you don't have a Clowder account, you cannot access it. So it's a nice way to have sort of an extra layer of security sitting there where only those people that should have access to it have access to it as well.
So is it like you'd go to a Clowder web page to go and set up the...
No, you can actually do this from the QGIS desktop application.
Oh.
You basically paste in the URL to the CSW, which has Clowder in it. And Clowder has this notion of keys, application keys or user keys. And so you use the user key to basically use that as your credentials.
Huh, neat. Okay. So they're like embedded in the URL?
Yes,
Neat.
correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see Colter joined, so we can go to the next.
All right, I will stop.
All right. Thank you so much, Todd. And thank you, Colter, for joining us. Sorry for the confusion.
No worries. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just getting all set up with Google Slides. I just completed a small run of projects after COVID landed. I wanted to do a little bit of catch up with you guys so you can see what I'm doing. And of course, maybe go over my longer history in working with Clowder. So let me get my sharing set up. All right, is that coming through okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the topic of the talk is community networking with Unity and Clowder. And so I just want to preface this with like the research project that I'm working on is called Reveal 3D, which is real-time interactive environments for education and learning. It's kind of a whopper. And the app that we're developing or set of tools we're developing is called Wicker, which is just a generic bridge between Clowder and Unity that allows for an interchange of metadata and assets, whether that's 3D assets, photographs, user comments, and things like that, passing from Unity in a phone or VR headset and the Clowder backend. So basically using Clowder as our support infrastructure, our network infrastructure for these real-time experiences, which can be on-site in interesting locations, historic locations, museums, and even city streets, for instance. So going into 2019, we had an outing where we supported artists using visualizing 3D assets in Credit Art Museum. But we're really looking for not just displaying content, but allowing users to make comments or rate or do other kinds of social interactions with that data. And our Unity side was just not sophisticated enough to support that level of complexity. And so going into the pandemic, I was looking to build smaller projects that could build up support on the Unity side for handling more complex, more numerous kinds of data coming between Clowder and Unity. So the first outing for this was a small scale video game. I was looking to release it to the public on an open source distributing platform called itch.io. It's for indie games. So the idea was to create a very, very simple game, but track and log user performance. So how well they played in the game, where they went, what they did, what they chose. Wrap that up into a form and then submit that as JSON to Clowder and just see, with this game out into hundreds of people's hands, what kind of data streams in. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I modeled out this tilt board game and made a session log recorder. And it's actually a very flexible set of scripts so that in any session that you run on Unity, you can track the location of objects, the states of objects, as well as have this kind of like periodic recording of like user movement. And yeah, that all gets uploaded to Clowder. We generate a unique user hash for each user. So at least in Clowder, we have a space that's being targeted, and then every user is actually a separate data set. So if you play 50 rounds, we actually see all 50 rounds in sequence. Unfortunately, I didn't get it posted as metadata, so these are raw JSON files. So getting it extracted around those files is like a little bit more complex than I hoped. It's definitely possible, but still to do is to start running analysis and summaries on what players did, how long they played, and those things to get summary statistics out. This game was not super popular. We still have thousands of play logs between like 177 users. But the data coming out of it, I don't assume is terribly interesting. This is kind of a proof of concept. And this is what the output of our logging system looks like. It's pure JSON. We create the proper headers, and then we just have these different flexible arrays. So you can basically subscribe objects or events, and they just get posted in this log dynamically as they occur. And this is just to show like, okay, we have arrays and we're tracking different things. But you could actually use the script in a lot of different kinds of Unity programs and record lots of different kinds of data. Like it makes user tracking much easier to set up. And if anyone is interested in having access to this script, I'm more than happy to help. I'm going to revisit this a little bit later for upcoming projects, but yeah, recording stuff out of Unity, very efficient. Besides, you do get a hit in performance when we store this log in like Unity C# space, so like whatever its proprietary memory is, and then we like write it out to a JSON and post directly to Clowder at the end. So I guess there could be more asynchronous posting activity or stuff like that, but it seems like it's not inefficient enough to like cause a big lurch for performance. As well, we just for privacy, we let users know in every instance that their data is going somewhere. And I didn't hear any complaints from Luigi that this is like destroying the server. So I think like the server is well equipped to handle user logs kind of coming in. So the second experiment that I performed was trying to get more bidirectional data moving between Clowder and Unity. And I'll just show a video. It became part of a Christmas bundle. So I think there were 24 games for 24 days in December. Ours was December 17th. And we opened up this asynchronous server space for users to post and read user activity from, I think, December 17th to January 1st. So there was a limited window. And I started to think about how we bracket off these activities of data collection so they're not like continuously running. So for Minotaur, people are still posting data and I can't turn it off. I mean, I can turn off the endpoint and they won't connect, but we don't have high-level controls for how that operates. And that was something I wanted to implement for this, the people's tree. So I'm going to show you a video. Hopefully this comes through okay. Do you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So users enter the space, and what we're seeing now is a Christmas tree. And what we do is we grab like all the data sets from Clowder, and we begin to parse those and populate user-submitted pieces of data. So in this case, users design ornaments, and then they bundle in comments we call guest signatures. And so each one of these on the tree represents a unique user and a unique post. And so yeah, users can scroll around the tree and they can see the ornaments. I'm going to demonstrate the creation process. And yeah, that's the Clowder cat is one of our ornament shapes. So I'll get into the infrastructure a little bit. This is just showing the app, but users can select, I think there are 16 shapes. They can pick 3 colors that get applied to each shape. And once they select a color, they can write a comment and select a place on the tree. I tried to optimize fetching and updating the state of the tree. So like users actually decide what place on the tree they want to be. And so there was some care about like, I don't want to have overlapping ornaments. Some other functions are, I have something called a master switch. So before any Unity game or instance of this game begin populating the scene, they actually ping Clowder, and they're asking for a set of directions. And they can set parameters like how big are the ornaments on the tree. So as the event was occurring, I was actually shrinking the ornaments to allow more ornaments on the tree. Because in the beginning, like it would be very sparse with tiny ornaments, and depending on how many people participated, you'd want more space. And what I'm showing here is if you're an admin, so it's not connected with Clowder, but we can basically set admin access, and they can approve and delete comments that appear on the tree. So one thing that I was worried about is when you have online elements in a game, people might be abusive, and we did see some abusive comments. And so before other users visualize other user submitted data, it actually has to be approved, and that's a Boolean that the admin can flip on a comment. And so every day during the active period, I was reading through all the comments and just checking to make sure that they're positive and relevant. So some of them were abusive. A lot of them that were kind of borderline were like self-promotion. Lots of people wanted to post their like Twitter handle or their Twitch streaming channel or sell their merch. And I allowed most of those up. So this was the game. It ran till January 1st. Let's see. And I'm just going to go a little bit into how the Clowder end works. So I created a special space called Admit Calendar 2020. There are 3 data sets in it. So I mentioned the master switch has like high-level controls that control each game. I'll go into specifics later. All the ornaments, as in a shape and 3 colors, like that's another data set. And then the guest book handles all the signatures. And because we have, we're tracking input with, let's see, because we're tracking all of the inputs from users by their hashes, Unity hashes. So this extracted by bit is actually the Unity ID hash. So we can link between those 2 separate data sets because the ornament and the comment will always have the same hash. And we can use Clowder's like search by extractor function to like basically grab those or update them or delete them specifically. So that was like a really great feature, like not having to go through the entire set of metadata. You can actually target and access these specific entries based on that. The infrastructure at the Unity end that makes building these sorts of connections easier is we have a Wicker base. So we have like a generic object. We have a Wicker manager. And that actually handles like admin versus user stuff. It handles getting, posting, fetching, updating, deleting, like all of that stuff that's relevant to Clowder happens in this generic manager. And then you can extend that and include more kinds of data. So like a guest signature also has a name, location, message, a date, time, and an approval status. So you can basically extend out from this base class and get like create many different kinds of linked assets. So like every asset gets potentially a user ID, so that hash, Clowder ID, position and rotation. So like every object, no matter what, is going to get those. And then you can actually bundle in extra data after that point. One thing we're also doing is we save local copies of data sets. So after this event, presumably the server is going to go offline. So for every kind of Wicker data set that is being downloaded to Unity, there's an option to download a local copy to get the most up-to-date copy of that metadata and just store it locally. And I can either remotely stop downloading. So like I can basically say, let's see, no. With the master switch, I can turn on and off posting. I can turn on and off loading ornaments. I can turn on and off comments. And I can turn on and off whether or not users can download a copy of the data set to their own computer. So presumably in like 20 years, if you still have this executable on your PC, you can still see the tree from 2020, which is kind of important because like the kind of value that's generated here is retrospective, like looking into the past a little bit and seeing what was going on. So this was more or less a success. We had around 400 ornaments and signatures. 10 of them were too borderline to include. Some people were very interested in the election still, apparently, and wanted to let the tree kind of reflect that. One of the interesting things about using this user ID hashing system is that we can auto approve your comment. So no matter what you post, whether it's abusive or good, it will always appear on your tree. So everyone essentially starts shadow banned. So if someone's going to be moderated, they have no idea. So I found that to be a very nice little solution because if people feel like they're getting banned or something, they're like sometimes motivated to like test the limits of your system. But if they never realize that they've been banned or not included, like that's not a problem. So yeah, users store, as long as you access the tree and the server's up, you get the most up-to-date copy. And since it's halted, there are no new ornaments, like you just get the final tree and you can view it at any time afterwards. And then the master switch is a very important tool for like having this high level control on what users can do. So for instance, like turning off posting comments. You don't want to be data collecting when you don't want to. You don't want all of these clients to be pinging the server with this data if you don't want it. So that master switch is a pretty important piece of the puzzle. And now with these functions more or less online, the question is what comes next? So there's like a very popular indie game called The Haunted PS1 Demo Disc. It includes, for the 2021 edition, it has 30 games included with an expected like 60,000 users. So I've been brought on to help with building their launcher. And the launcher is not designed yet. We're currently curating the games that get included. But potentially we could have Clowder functions in the launcher. We can track users. We can track what they play and for how long. We can answer questions about like what games are users getting to? Are they playing all the demos or just one or two? As well, we can introduce social components in the launcher, and those aren't designed yet, but can users access information that each other are posting? Can they make comments? Could they flip switches or open doors or close doors that appear in other people's games? Like there are like lots of interesting social questions that can be posed through these asynchronous network interactions. And that's a space that I really want to explore with this Unity Clowder bridge, if possible. So that's presumably out in March or April. As well, I'm going to be working with a new professor in advertising, Dr. Jacob Fisher, specializes in neuroscience and media, and he's built a video game that can measure attention and cognitive load and decision making in Unity in different kinds of like game space contexts. So like more items on the screen, less items on the screen, interruptions, testing like where people's attention sits when they're presented with lots of different things to do. And so I'm basically going to join him in his research to build tools for extracting data out of Unity in a way that's scalable, so you can send this game to lots of different people in different places. You know, not all of them coming into a lab. It could also run through Unity WebGL, so it could run in the browser, so just getting to people faster. And yeah, I think he's got his own stack for collecting the data, but I'm definitely going to be using the code that I built for Wicker for this Unity Clowder bridge as a way of like easier collection of the data, formatting of the data, and hopefully for getting summary statistics out of that data. Oh yeah, and that's it. That's all I have to present. I'd open up to any questions you guys have. It's a real pleasure to share what I'm doing, and Clowder's done a lot of, like, it's been very beneficial to have access to Clowder for, you know, the pandemic.
Thank you, Colter. This was great. Any questions for Colter?
I just got to say, you always do the coolest stuff. So thank you for showing this to us.
Thanks. Yeah, really love to share it. And I view everything that I've done so far as a big success. And every little step is building out the functionality for Clowder so that in the future we can do really, really sophisticated things, hopefully, with our augmented reality app.
So I have a question. So the Wicker Unity Clowder bridge that you mentioned, that, you know, now that you're using it in different projects, I imagine it's helping you generalize it. Is it ready to be shared with others? So if I wanted to try, you know, doing some stuff in Unity and talk to Clowder in the backend, is that something that, you know, you can share now, or what's your thinking?
I would definitely be open to open sourcing the people's tree because it demonstrates most of the essential pieces of the puzzle. Yes, like the whole purpose of the people's tree is to generalize this Wicker set of functions, this extendable class, so that you can get and post information. And also to like anticipate problems that presumably other users would see if I were to open source it. And so if there's an interest, I would definitely open source that entire project. And just so that people can poke around. I think you do need a moderate experience with Unity to just understand how the Unity stuff is operating. I might have mentioned that like the base kind of Wicker manager and Wicker base object, like those are just relevant to Clowder activities. And then these extensions, so like guest book is an extension that handles guest signatures, like that's handling all the Unity side code. So they're kind of segmented. So just being able to see the base and how it's extended might help if you're trying to like do your own thing. But yeah, I'm very interested in open sourcing the project and just getting it into a form where other people can take it and run.
Yeah, that would be great. And even just to show people patterns that you're currently using and learning and developing, right? So that they can do similar things in their own projects would be really helpful. Yeah,
and also like, I think I've been holding off on Extractors, but I think hopefully the next game, when we get the demo disk launcher, will be designed such that Extractors can create summary statistics. That's kind of my goal, is like, you know, once these indie developers release these games into the wild, they really don't get tracking. They don't understand where users are going, what they're doing, how long they're spending with the game, and being like, and that's something that most professional studios are doing. They get that kind of data and they're able to iterate on that. And just making that available as a resource to other indie developers at the very small scale, I think will be tremendous for allowing them to make better products.
Definitely. Do you have to ask for permission to record that, or is it because they're already using a multiplayer kind of game that it's kind of implied that obviously you know what they're doing?
For the People's Tree, there's a forewarning in the launcher that says this game has online elements. So, and I guess I'm pretty careful to say, like, we don't have, I think Wicker has a privacy policy, our AR app, because that's like much more sensitive. It's on your phone. And we're doing things like taking photos with your phone and other things like that. So for the People's Tree, that was like online elements, and it is what it is, like you're getting and posting comments. For Minotaur, we have an upfront warning that there's remote tracking, and then there's an option in the menu so that you can turn off that tracking. And that just turns off everything from player recording. And there are certain features in Minotaur that disable with that turned off. So like if you're seeing here, you can actually see your play session. So that player log that we record is used to generate this path. And in the game, you can actually cheat certain paths. You can like cross over it from one section to another, and we were able to visualize that. So I'm trying to tie the value that's generated from the log, giving it to the users so that it's more tempting to just let us also get that data on Clowder. And so far, no one's complained, but I think gamers are pretty open to telemetry in games. I think that's not something they're very scared about. And also, the other reason I'm going after this haunted PlayStation 1 group is like, there's hundreds of thousands of users. They're all motivated to try these apps. And so it's an interesting audience to try and like engage and hopefully get like, okay, these are motivated testers really. And in general, as I mentioned, like there are 10 comments out of 400 that were like not fit to post. Like that's a pretty good average for the internet.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Colter. Any other questions or comments for Colter or Todd?
I have no questions, just a remark to add, to congratulate Colter for his work and to say a few words for the broader about the broader context in all the activities that we are developing that relate to co-creation and participatory methodology development. The opportunity to give to the users of software to enable them to interact with spatial metaphors and digital assets through spatial metaphors, and to be able to actually comment and assign comments on specific digital assets, and then creating a stage, a platform for dialogue. It's very, very central and highly important and significant. And Colter has been instrumental in building towards this end. And actually, I really admire and appreciate the planning that and the clarity that Colter has been showing through the year, actually, because through small short-term activities, he's managing always to build yet another feature that when we will manage to bring everything together, we will reach a great level of it will be a great achievement. So well done, Colter.
Thank you. Our next big outing will be hopefully around Easter. There's an Austrian artist, Erwin Wurm, who makes these pretty crazy sculptures that people kind of like interact with. They're called like minute sculptures, I think. So imagine like a table with a hole in it that you like force your body through and take a photo. And so there's a plan to have an exhibition in Palermo, Italy, where users are scanning QR codes with the Wicker app, seeing these beautifully scanned 3D sculptures. They had a really high-class scanning firm or studio come in and get this data. And the question is, in Wicker, can we allow users to create interesting photos with these 3D meshes that implicate them in the same way as the physical sculptures? And our app now has the function to like take photos that basically mesh better with the 3D assets and the person within it. Still pretty cutting edge in terms of occlusion. Like the AR stuff is very slowly evolving, and we're just kind of skimming from the surface of that. And then, yeah, potentially like asking questions of how users can generate values for other users, because this isn't going to be an exhibition where it has opening and closing hours. It's going to be 24 hours a day. People can wander in and out of that space, presumably. And so what are these asynchronous interactions that can happen between guests? Can they leave comments for each other? And just that opens up a big string of questions about like, how do you make this engage? How do you turn the value produced by users into value that other users can glean? Which I think is a very interesting question that newer video games are proposing, this asynchronous networking. And yeah, Clowder is a really excellent backend for those kinds of processes because they seem really efficient and available, generously available to us.
Very cool. Thank you and good luck. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Colter. If you have any topics you would like to hear about regarding Clowder on future webinars, please let us know. If you have any work you're currently doing that you want to show on these webinars, please let us know. So thanks a lot, everyone. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you.